Okay, we will call this meeting to order, the agenda priorities meeting for October the 3rd. And I will ask Councillor Dunham to please read the land acknowledgement.
Thank you, Mayor Barclay. The town of Innisfail acknowledges that we are meeting on Treaty 7 territory, the ancestral and traditional territory of the Blackfoot Confederacy, Kainai, Piikani, and Siksika, as well as the Tsuut'ina Nation and Stoney Nakoda First Nation. We acknowledge that this territory is home of the Métis Nation of Alberta, Region 3, within the historical Northwest Métis homeland. We acknowledge the many First Nation, Métis, Inuit who have lived in and cared for these lands for generations. We are grateful for the traditional knowledge keepers and elders who are still with us today and those who have gone before us. We make this acknowledgement as an act of reconciliation and gratitude to those whose territory we reside on.
Right, thank you. And are there any additions or deletions to the agenda?
Yes, Mayor and Council, under in-camera, CAO performance review, the 2 items associated with that topic.
Okay, thank you. Could I please have someone make a motion to adopt the agenda as amended? Councillor Dunham?
Mayor Barclay, I'll make that motion.
Okay, thank you. All in favor? All right, carried. And we will move into 3.1, upcoming events. I'll just have someone make a motion to accept these events as information, please. Councillor Harrison?
Thank you. I so move.
Okay, thank you. All in favor? Okay, carried. And we'll move into 3.2, and I'll ask Director Kennedy to open this up, please.
Thanks, Mayor Barclay. So actually, I'm going to hand it over to Kevin to do the orientation, but I'll just do a quick background intro here. So in 2020, the town's health and safety program achieved our CORE, or Certificate of Recognition. Each year, we have to complete either an internal or external audit. Based on the new regulations from Alberta Municipal Health, all council members are to participate now in the health and safety program. One of the members will be involved in the internal process, audit this year. So what we've had is asked Kevin to provide us with kind of our most important policies that we have for you guys to review and go through on our orientation. Hopefully you guys have had a chance to go through them on the weekend. Kevin will just highlight kind of the important things on the policies for you just to kind of go through that quick orientation for now. So I'll ask Kevin to come forward.
Yeah, we'll just ask you to turn your mic on, Kevin.
There,
Perfect.
how's that?
Yes, and we did receive them in our agenda package.
Okay, good.
Thanks for the homework.
Okay, sorry about that. So the first policy is the health and safety policy, and that is basically the cornerstone of your health and safety program. That's the organization's commitment to the health and safety of all employees and anyone else on the work site. In 2018, occupational health and safety changed a whole lot of their policies and procedures. Within that, they also added the fact that we had to look after the employees' psychological and social well-being of our employees. That's where the working alone policy and fatigue management policy, as well as harassment and violent policies come from that aspect. Also within the health and safety policy are roles and responsibilities. Senior managers, supervisors, workers, contractors, anybody basically on a town work site have occupational health and safety roles and responsibilities that they have to follow and fall under. The organization will look at all hazards and identify all potential hazards and create control measures for those hazards. Senior managers will set health and safety protocols and work procedures, as well as provide proper equipment, training, and budgetary resources. That may be a key point that you may want to remember for the audit, because there may be a question on the audit that asks what resources does the organization provide for health and safety, or senior management provide, and that's one of the resources that they provide. Managers will set the positive example by leadership and performance of occupational health and safety for contractors, following OH&S Act legislation and codes, as well as organizations' policies. Supervisors, workers, and contractors must be familiar with the health and safety policies of the town, as well as the Occupational Health and Safety Act as it applies. And by everybody participating in the health and safety program and following the roles and responsibilities, we would achieve our goal of a incident-free workplace or an injury-free workplace. So that is what the health and safety, so there's just a few things in there to remember, because one of the questions on the audit may be, what are some of the key points out of the health and safety policy? So the fact that it's a commitment to health and safety, that there's roles and responsibilities within the health and safety policy, that employees are responsible to follow Occupational Health and Safety Act legislation, as well as company policies and procedures. So when we look at the assignment of responsibilities and accountability for health and safety, that one was a long policy. You'll notice that there's probably a lot of repetitiveness in the first 5 responsibilities there. All of these are exactly right out of the Act. There's nothing that I put into there other than changing it into words that people would understand rather than legislation. So that these are actually what employees, supervisors, managers, and senior leaders are responsible for under the Occupational Health and Safety Act. So the first one is to ensure the health and safety of themselves and everyone else in the work site. That's basic, everyone's roles and responsibilities under the OH&S Act. Everybody has that responsibility. To ensure that they comply with the Occupational Health and Safety Act code regulations, as well as organization safety policies and procedures. The question that I ask all of my employees when we're orientating them is, how are you to know what the Occupational Health and Safety Act says? Is anybody going to sit and read that little blue binder that's this thick? I do on a regular basis. You know it by the policies and procedures that we put into place, our SOPs, everything else like that. That's how you know what's in that act, because we build our policies and procedures and our safe operating practices around the OH&S Act. So that's how you would know that. The next one, number 3, the 3 rights. Those are very important. Everybody should know there's 3 rights under the Occupational Health and Safety Act. The right to be informed on hazards within the workplace, the right to participate or meaningful participation within the health and safety program, and the right to refuse dangerous work or unsafe work. The right to refuse dangerous work and unsafe work has been in the Act for probably 20 years. The addition of the other 2 were implemented in 2018 when they come out with the new H&S regulations. Putting more emphasis that employees now, not only employers have the roles and responsibilities of identifying hazards within the workplace, but so do the employees. And that's an obligation under the OH&S Act. To ensure potential and actual hazards are identified and communicated to employees. Again, that's part of the Act. To ensure that employees are not subject to or participate in harassment or violence at the work site. Again, that's under the harassment and violence policy that we have in place for our employees, and that was new in 2018. That became part of the legislation. To ensure adequate resources, tools, equipment, and supervision. To ensure employees are adequately trained to protect the health and safety of themselves and perform work activities. New activities, operate new equipment or processes, and when moved to a new area. Next one is accident, incidents, near misses, injuries, and illnesses investigated immediately and reviewed by senior management managers. All critical injuries or incidents are to be reported to OH&S as well as other government agencies. Under the OH&S Act, that is part of our legislative responsibility as workers as well as managers and supervisors, is to immediately report any injuries or incidents within the workplace. And then that we would do a proper follow-up and investigation on that. And to establish and maintain a joint worksite health and safety committee. Pretty much the rest of them are all the same. Winnie, if you could scroll down to the workers. So under the workers, basically what AMSHA is looking at is that council would be identified as a worker not a senior leader or not a manager or supervisor. They would be under the worker roles and responsibilities. So again, the workers' responsibilities is to protect the health and safety of themselves and others in the worksite, know the act, regulations, codes, as well as health and safety policies, procedures, and then the 3 rights, which I cannot emphasize enough, that you need to know the right to know the hazards within the worksite, meaningful participation within the health and safety program, and right to refuse work. And then operate tools and equipment in a safe manner, immediately notify supervisors of unsafe conditions, immediately report all accidents, incidents, near misses, injuries, and illnesses to your supervisor or manager, which for you, I'm not sure who you would report to. That would be a question Todd would need to answer, or someone other than myself. But immediately reporting it. And again, if you're out doing an activity for the town, you'd be considered a worker, you'd be considered covered under our WCB. So therefore, if you were injured, we would require you to contact and let us know that you've been injured or that you've been in an incident. Becomes very important when you're traveling. If you're traveling to meetings, things like that, if you're in an accident, we need to know that. We need to know that you're traveling under the OHS Act of working alone. Because if you're traveling and you're working alone, you're traveling by yourself, you are working alone. So then we need to have some way of communicating and contacting that you are traveling and working alone under the OHS Act. So those are just some of the things. And then cooperate, participate in the program. Any questions on that so far?
Kevin, maybe through to CEO Becker, but I guess I have a question about the traveling and working alone. Do that quite a bit, and are we considering putting in some kind of a, I guess, program or something where we notify people that we're going to X? And
Mayor Barclay, to your question, that policy exists now. We're just finally councils are becoming part of the program.
Okay.
Basically, it's as easy as contacting somebody. I've arrived. We do that probably about 90% of the time. 80% of the time, we try to do our best. It's basically I arrived to Edmonton and I've arrived home, and that's as simple as that. And Kevin, you maybe I'll speak differently if you like a little bit more robust.
We have the
attention to
we have the
policy,
Working Alone app that they could use as well. So we can add you to our Working Alone app. Basically what it is, it's an app on the phone. And so when you're going out, you would just put your contact in there that you're leaving, where you're going to. Hit the time, it's a 2-hour timer, and then it times down. If you don't respond within, it'll click in at 15 minutes to your shut-off time. It'll send you a text message, and then 5 minutes later, it'll text you again. Then it'll phone you at your due time, and then if you don't answer any of those 3, then it contacts your alternate contact.
okay.
Just to speak to that, council is, so there's a few tools you can apply. Understanding that the app is complex, if you use it regularly, then it becomes ingrained. If you're traveling occasionally, as council members would do on occasion, a little bit more complex because you have to rehearse how to do it. But I'd say a minimum is ensuring that connection with a council member or somebody that I've arrived.
So, well, we can talk about another time, but I'm wondering if we should assign a person because, you know, it could get confusing or there's no real, I guess, path in place to like, who do we contact, and is somebody responding to that contact? And I can text somebody, but what if nobody responds to it? And so,
I can help in that regard.
yeah,
council,
we can do
at
that another time, but
Yeah.
yeah, okay.
Just
Councillor Heistad?
Go.
Slide on first.
You can go. Okay, so, no, just listening to that, and it does bring a couple other questions up, because quite often, specifically, the travel might be off business hours, like off regular town business hours, so that would be a consideration. And the app, if it's on a 2-hour cycle, that doesn't even get you hardly to Edmonton on a travel, so then if you start getting texts and, yeah.
again, I don't want to create conflict with my health and safety coordinator, but let's start here. I'd say let's introduce the concept of working alone policy with council, build upon it. It's taken us a few years to get into that, and still guilty on occasion to not inform. As of Friday, I failed on the policy. However, I'd like to, we want to ingrain the mindset into council as we are building in our organization. But we can get into the habit of contacting somebody that I'm going to contact, Erica or Stephen or Megan, that I've arrived. I think that's really where I think it's a good start, and build from there.
Councillor Heistad?
Yeah, thanks. I think a process would be good. I know that in my other job, we do have an app type process that we use, and it's quite easy to use. Like I think all of you are quite sophisticated that you get it. I guess my question for Kevin would be, I know just recently you did a training session on harassment or behavior, and how to conduct yourself at work. And I think that it's for myself and sitting at different board tables, I think there would be a good opportunity for us to take some type of training that would be similar to our staff, that would, kind of sets a benchmark for not only us, but it allows us to, we're leaders within the organization. And I think it's important that staff see that, but I don't know if that's, will of management. And also for the community as well, as, when people come into our chambers and that respectful workplace, I think there's an opportunity there to adhere by that, not only by us, but by the public as well. So just thought I'd throw that out.
This is more of a comment, Councillor, or starting to think of the code of conduct. That's certainly applicable to council's respectful workplace. Within the code of council. Also anything, whether you're dealing with harassment to you, that's, certainly another play on that. So certainly looking for further feedback if you wish to advance any further training on those areas.
Councillor Messaros?
Thank you, Mayor Barclay, through to our speaker. What gets set into motion if that app doesn't get answered?
If for the individual,
Yeah.
you have 3 call-out people. So, for instance, for myself, Stephen is first contact because he's my immediate supervisor. If Stephen doesn't answer, then it goes to Gary, and then from Gary, it goes to Todd. So I have 3 alternate contacts. So if one of my contacts don't answer it, the third one does. After the first contact doesn't get answered, EMSs and fires are contacted for whatever area you're supposed to be in. More specifically for that, if you're knowing where you're going, but if you're traveling down a highway, then they don't know where to send the person. So they're hoping and relying that they can get a hold of one of the 3 alternate contacts.
Thank you, Mayor Barclay, through to Kevin. I just got a question around the joint health and safety worksite committees. How does council link into that?
Haven't thought about that one.
Because now that this is really starting to get involved, all of the requirements for council, and I think we only, pardon me, maybe Todd can answer the question. Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
Mayor Barclay, Councillor Harrison, so really it's largely in policy framework, and then understanding the role of governance. So we are moving into having council involved with the health and safety audit, and the questions associated with that audit will be geared towards more of a understanding of the refuge and work and those policy items. But we're trying to maintain your role at the governance level with a clear understanding of the program that Kevin is orientating you to. So you would not be part of the Joint Health and Safety Committee. You would through your employee, which is me, but certainly privy to any questions, comments, and even the audit process is going to be reported to council. I think more specifically to all the wins of the program, but also some of the areas of focus. So yeah, I'd say maintain position of governance and through the policy framework.
Okay, thank you very much, CEO Becker. Thanks, Kevin.
Okay, right to refuse dangerous work policy. Right to refuse dangerous work policy has been in place for just as of 2018 when they made more emphasis on put more emphasis on the employee's right to refuse work. Basically within the policy, it just states that employees who have a legitimate reason for refusing work cannot be terminated or cannot be disciplined for refusing unsafe work or what they believe to have been unsafe work. If they do or when they do refuse work, we need to do an investigation. We would do the investigation with the Joint Worksite Safety Committee member as well as the supervisor as well as myself. We would investigate the refusal, find out if it's a legitimate refusal. If the employee who refused work and the employer still cannot make conciliation, then either one can call in the occupational health and safety officer to come in and do an investigation. They would then come in and they would determine whether the work was safe to perform or not, or whether we need to make any changes. The employee that did refuse work could be reassigned to other work, but the big point is that they can't be disciplined and they can't be penalized for refusing to do unsafe work. In over 40 years of working, I've never seen anybody refuse unsafe work or enact that. So it's a policy that's there, but usually if somebody refuses to do unsafe work, it's because they haven't been properly trained or are unfamiliar with the task, and then that's not even refusing unsafe work, that's their role and responsibility, that's their obligation as an employee to do that. So yeah, so I've never seen that one really utilized that well. Next one. Hazard assessment and control. So basically the hazard assessment and control is the second step. It's identifying all of your hazards within the work site. Some of the definitions, so a hazard, what is a hazard? A condition, circumstance, or thing that has a potential to cause injury, illness, disease to a worker or damaged property or equipment. Incident is an unplanned or unwanted event which results in damage or injury, which could have resulted in damage or injury. Hazard assessment, a thorough examination of a workplace or work situation as to the potential for hazards that an employee may encounter while performing their job. Inspection is an observation tour of the workplace for such specific purposes or determining the level of compliance with hazard assessment recommendations, safe work procedures, safety rules and regulations, established safe work practices. We look at elimination. So elimination, basically if you can eliminate the hazard, then it takes it out of the workplace. You do no longer have to worry about that hazard. Otherwise, we look at three types of control measures for hazards. First one is an engineering control, which deals with the installation or modification of equipment for physical control of the hazard. So that's your emergency stops, guards on equipment, chains, things like that. That's an engineering control. Then we look at administrative controls, which are policies, procedures, safe work practices that deal with those hazards. And then the final control measure is your personal protective equipment. That's your final last-ditch effort to control the hazard or eliminate it. Usually it's more to control the hazard than it is to eliminate the hazards. So those are the three things that you look at when you're trying to control a hazard. You look at engineering control, administrative control, and then personal protective equipment. And your safe practices is a working risk control document that describes the safest way to perform the work task or job safely. So there's 5 guidelines. So hazard assessment or complete all positions tasks. So basically what we did was we looked at the job descriptions and what tasks were within those job descriptions. From those job descriptions, we looked at the tasks performed. From those tasks, then we identify each step of those tasks and any hazards associated with each one of those steps, and then come up with the appropriate control measure. In 2018, Occupational Health and Safety also made working alone and harassment and violence part of the hazard assessment process. So every hazard assessment has to have or contain working alone as well as harassment and violence as part of the assessment process. So we also look at it that we, at least every 3 years, we'll take a look at the results and update them if we need to. When changes are made to an operation or work-related process, when a new process is introduced, when site-specific hazard assessments identify a new hazard, when an inspection identifies a new hazard, or when an incident identifies a new hazard. We will do a hazard assessment or repeat the hazard assessment process. So again, as I said, there's the 6 steps to taking it, looking at your jobs that you have, job descriptions, then you look at your functions, your tasks, and then go down to your steps. When we did this, we looked at, to come up with a safety matrix, we looked at calculating severity and then likelihood. So calculating our severity, town come up with 3 would be catastrophic, and that would be a fatality or a cause of permanent disability or equipment damage over $50,000. Would be classified as catastrophic. 2 would be a lost time being off work beyond the day of the injury or no permanent disability. Equipment or property damage between $5,000 and $50,000. And then 1 would be a minor, which would be a first aid, modified duties, or equipment damage under $5,000. Likelihood would be calculated as 3 would be highly likely due to the nature of the hazard, might happen due to the nature of the hazard, and unlikely to happen due to the nature of the hazard. So when you look at the matrix, a 3 and a 3 would be a 9, so that would be a high hazard task. So that would be your equipment operations, firefighting, things like that would be your high tasks, your high risk. Administrative tasks would be more on the 2, 3 level, where you would have a risk factor of 2 or 3, depending on the frequency and severity of the incident. Okay, so you just times severity by likelihood, and you come up with a 9 or a 1, depending on the severity and frequency. The roles and responsibilities. So senior leaders need to ensure that this is being done and completed, which we have completed on all the tasks, all the jobs. Managers need to ensure that lead the hazards process, ensure that the control measures are identified and used, and ensure employees participate in the hazard identification process. And Joint Worksite Safety Committee actively participate in the hazard assessment process, achieve hazard assessment training through AMSHA and on-the-job training, which we have done that. Next slide. And then the process will be reviewed. And then our review process that we will review it every 3 years and revise it as necessary. And then this is the hazard assessment form. So basically you put your job position at the top, who it was performed by, and then PPE required for it. You'd identify your tasks, the hazards, severity, and then your control measures. Okay, Worksite health and safety inspection policy. So basically, there's 2 types of inspections that we do. We do ongoing informal inspections and we do planned formal inspections. So the ongoing informal inspections should become part of the day-to-day activity. So basically, it's our employees that do their day-to-day inspections on pre-trips, on their vehicles, on their equipment that they're using, their PPE. So that's the ongoing informal inspections that get done. And then we have planned formal inspections. Once a month, all the facilities are inspected on a schedule. The individuals that do the inspections would vary within the department and group. Senior leaders are also assigned to do inspections at each one of the facilities at least once a year. So they participate in the facility inspection within all the facilities within the town. And that's a schedule. We have 2 people. We try to do employee contacts when we are doing the observation tour or doing the inspection to ask employees questions if they're available. Sometimes that's difficult because within some of our facilities there are no employees, because at the operations shop there may not be anybody there but the mechanics. Everybody else may be out working. Once the inspection is completed, it goes to the supervisor. Supervisor signs off on it, then it goes to the manager. From the manager, it goes to the director. From the director, it goes to CEO, and CEO comes to me, and then I record any deficiencies that were identified on the inspection into an action plan. The action plan is reviewed by senior leaders as well as by the Joint Worksite Safety Committee. And that's how we follow up on our corrective actions or anything that happens to be deficient, so that it does get corrected in a timely manner. Yeah. So that's about it for inspections. And then that's a schedule. So for everybody, so that everybody has knowledge of when they're supposed to be going and doing their inspections. And they are assigned. So monthly safety meetings. So there are formal and toolbox talks. So formal or monthly health and safety inspections. Every department has a monthly health and safety inspection. It's also scheduled, and that is they're planned. The toolbox talks are more for employees that are out in the field, and they do field level hazard assessments and have their toolbox talks on site. So senior managers, they are responsible for participating in at least one other department health and safety meeting. So they will do the inspection as well as go to the safety meeting for that department that they're there for that month. Managers will do all the inspections within their facility, as well as supervisors, the manager or the supervisor, depending on who's available. Workers, we also have worker representatives that attend the formal safety inspection or safety meeting. Each department schedule, we also have once a month, minutes will be kept. The 5 topics that we talk about at the safety meeting are recent accident investigation results. Summary has gone over, current facility inspection. If there's any deficiencies or anything else like that, it's talked about there. Safety topic is discussed. The Joint Worksite Safety Committee typically picks the topic for the next month for the safety topic, and that's what we discuss at all the safety meetings. There can also be other topics that the manager supervisors want to bring up at that safety meeting as well. That relates to their individual department. There's also an area for concerns, so if employees have concerns, they can raise it at this time as well and discuss it as a group within their department. And that'll be documented as well. And then there's also a section for follow-up. So basically, if there's any incidents or any follow-up from any discussions, that's documented there, so that's brought forward into the next safety meeting and discussed. And again, everything is gone through signing supervisors, managers, directors, and CAO to myself. Then I post them. Each one of the safety meetings, as well as the inspections, are posted within within their department, and they have to have the previous 3 months posted on their safety boards. Same thing with the Joint Worksite Safety Committee. Minutes, they will be posted on the Health and Safety Board for 3 months as well. Toolbox talks. So toolbox talks are field level hazard assessments, or FLHAs. They're what they do in the field, employees, or for one-off projects or job tasks. So the arena uses it for taking in and out ice because they only do that once a year. They put ice in once a year, take it out once a year, so they only do those once a year. It's not something that they would have constant or that they do all the time, so they don't have an SOP for it. They just do a field level hazard assessment. And supervisors and managers are responsible to ensure that the field level hazard assessments are completed, that they have a SOP with them, as well as their JPRs, or their hazard assessments, so that they can be reviewed when they're in the field with the employees that are doing that task. Everyone must sign off on the field level hazard assessment that's on that work site. If somebody comes onto that work site to visit, then they would also have to sign off on that field level hazard assessment as well. Once the job is complete, the supervisor signs off that it's closed out and ensures that the job task has been cleaned up or the site has been cleaned up. And those are also filed and documented and kept on file for review by the auditor as well as by anyone else who wants to review them. Employees receive training on field level hazard assessment completion during their orientation period, as well as on the job with their supervisors or managers. And again, all policies and procedures will be reviewed every 3 years or as new information becomes available. So the corrective action plan, basically to explain that is, do a corrective action plan for inspections, facility inspections, incident investigations, and there's one more, and I guess up top of my head, I can't remember what it's for. Basically, that's my tracking system for if there's a deficiency identified on an inspection, worksite inspection. I put it there, document it, keep track of it, and then this way it never gets forgotten about, so that it does get completed and tracked. As I said, senior leaders, managers, supervisors, and Joint Worksite Safety Committee have those monthly updates of those, so that we can keep track of it. Okay, next one. I don't know what the next policy is. General safety rules for visitors. So we have a general safety rules for visitors. Visitors are to sign into our logbook when they come into our building. Basically, it's more so that we understand who is within our facility. If there's an emergency evacuation at that point in time, that we know who is all within our facility. If we don't have visitors sign in, then we wouldn't know who was here. And we could forget somebody if there was a fire. So visitors must sign in or be accompanied by an employee unless they have a full orientation to the facility. We're instructed to do so by an employee. The visitors shall follow specific work practices related to the worksite being undertaken. Personal protective equipment required. So if there's personal protective required for that site, they would need to be required to wear it. All accidents, incidents must be reported to their supervisor or to the person with them. In the event of an emergency evacuation, the visitor must follow the direction of employee who is with them. No smoking policy is in effect for everyone. Individuals who are under the influence of alcohol or illicit drugs or otherwise impaired or pose a safety risk are prohibited from municipal premises or vehicles. Horseplay, fighting, harassment, and any kind of otherwise interfering with another person by visitors strictly prohibited and will result in the person being removed from the work site. So, and we have everybody within the town. If somebody from operations goes to the fire hall, they need to sign into the fire hall because they're not from that facility, but they're attending that facility. Same thing when I go to operations shop, I sign into the operations shop visitor log because I'm a visitor there. Even though I'm an employee, I'm still visiting that facility. So they would sign in wherever they're going into if they're not from that division or department. Any questions so far?
Councillor Harrison?
Thank you, Mayor Barclay. Through to Kevin. Yeah, just a question around, what about the public? We have a number of visitors come.
With here, we understand the public, it's a public forum for council, for public to come in, so we don't really have a policy for that. We've looked at it that if you go into the back offices, then you're a visitor and you have to sign in. So basically, that's considered our work site back there, and this is considered council, so it's two kind of different entities.
The foyer is
Yeah.
exempt from,
Yeah.
okay, good, thank you.
Other questions? Right, incident investigation policy. So all incidents, accidents, injuries, illnesses, near misses, and work refusals will be immediately investigated by a supervisor, manager, and safety coordinator to identify root cause corrective action for implementation to prevent the reoccurrence. So all employees are responsible for immediately reporting any workplace incident, accident, injury, illness, near miss, or work refusal to their immediate supervisor or manager. So then there's some definitions. We won't go through the definitions. Let's go to the, where do we go? Definitions, go down one. There we go. Guidelines. So when an incident occurs of any nature, the worksite involved must be contained. So, and no one must be moved or nothing must be removed. So unless you're while attending to someone who has been injured, while acting to prevent further injuries, while protecting property that is endangered because of the incident, or given permission to do so by an OH&S officer or peace officer if notified. So that's We run that through with all of our employees because the first thing they want to do is if they get into an accident is to move that piece of equipment off the road and put it off to the side to get it out of the way. It's really hard to do an incident investigation when they do that. It's better if they leave the equipment or whatever's damaged where it is so that we can get a good picture of what's going on or what happened. So some of the following incidents you must report to occupational health and safety. It's under the legislation. So if there's an injury or accident that results in a death, an injury or accident that results in an employee being admitted to a hospital, unplanned or uncontrolled explosion, fire, flood that causes serious injury or that has the potential to cause serious injury, collapse or upset of a crane, derrick, or hoist, collapse or failure of any component of a building or structure necessary for structural integrity of the building or structure, any injury or incident or class of injury or incidents specified in the regulation. OHS also has where if it has the potential to cause serious injury, then you have to report it to OHS. So even though it didn't, if it has the potential to cause serious injury, then you have to report that to OHS. So that's why it's important to be notified of incidents that you have, because if you're in a car accident or something like that, that could be classified as a potentially serious incident, which then we would need to report that to OHS. So those are some of the things that we need to keep in mind. If an employee is admitted or injuries indicate employee may be admitted to a hospital, do not delay and notify OHS immediately. It's better to notify them and let them know than later on have to come and say, well, we didn't know they were going to be admitted to hospital. Now they are. Now we need to report this incident to you. So I'd rather err on the side of caution and report it than not report it at all or be late reporting it. As long as you do a proper investigation, I found that OHS typically don't want to show up or they won't show up. They'll just call you and say, what did you do to control the hazard, or what did you control? What did you do to eliminate it? And usually our investigations are good enough that we send it into them and they go, we're okay with that. So, so in event, where am I? All right. In the event of an accident, no person shall interfere with, disturb, alter, or carry away any wreckage, article, or thing at the scene of or connected with the occurrence until permission to do so has been given by an investigator. The only exceptions are to save life or relieve human suffering to prevent unnecessary damage or equipment. Okay. All accidents need to be reported within 24 hours. In exception circumstances, 48 hours is acceptable. A statement from the injured person may be collected later if necessary. I say immediately report all incidents because this way, as if it's immediately, the time factor comes in with reporting it to WCB. An employer has 72 hours from the time of notification of an injury to report it to WCB, otherwise you're in contravention of their act. So that's what take action. We immediately start that process and get it controlled and get it done right away.
So Kevin, can I interrupt? Sorry.
Sure.
Not to take away from your presentation, I think we were moving into more of an overview. Now we're sliding into more line by line. I just wonder, just make sure you hit the highlights, and then maybe, will you cover your orientation through an overview? It feels like we're going more in specific to line by line through the policy.
Okay.
Does that make sense? So
Sure.
do you think the overview as we initiated the process would be sufficient for the orientation?
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Sure.
If, no, I'll repeat. We started the presentation of council orientation, more of an overview sections.
Okay.
Seems like we're going now per line. I just wonder, making sure, I don't want to take away your intent, making sure the orientation is covered. But if we can avoid the line by line, just your balance, you're the expert. But I'm just observing that we're going more specific to
Sure.
each line.
Okay, just give me a second. I need to review something first. Okay. Yeah, we can do that. Just checking to see where I needed to be. So once an incident's reported, we do the investigation. It then goes again through that process of, goes to supervisor, manager, senior manager, director, and then to CEO, and then to myself. So yeah. So that's just about it for that one. Next. So first aid policy. OH&S requires to have first aiders on the facility. So what we've decided to do here at the town is everyone takes their first aid, and then this way we don't have to worry about how many first aiders we have on site. OH&S has specific numbers of first aiders that are required with specific training, so we just have done that within our organization, said that everyone will have standard first aid at least. And then this way we won't have to worry about our numbers. When somebody is injured, they report to a first aider. They cannot treat themselves or do first aid on themselves. First aid report needs to be filled out as well as an incident form, because with every first aid there's an incident, because if otherwise you wouldn't be hurt and need first aid. So yeah. So the forms are on the work site. And again, we follow the incident investigation process. Modified work program. So if anybody is hurt at work and we do the proper investigation, we do proper documentation, get the employee seen by a physician, we would then offer them modified duty. We do have a program where once we're notified that somebody is injured, we would send them with documentation on their job task, send them with their physical demands to their doctor, so their doctor would be aware, and we would offer them modified duties within the organization, depending on their work restrictions. That would be something that would be discussed with their supervisor, their manager, the employee, WCB, and their physician to ensure that the work that we offer them will fit within their work restrictions. The employee would then just be kept in touch with, and with myself and the supervisor, and we would implement more tasks as they become available or as the employee improves. So that's basically the guidelines for that. There's a lot of responsibilities in there. Emergency preparedness and response. So within the town, we've identified emergency preparedness and response. So within the town, some of the emergencies we identified are fire, medical emergencies, bomb threat. Next slide. Aggressive, violent, armed threat, tornado, windstorm, ice storm, chemical spill, release of toxic substances, power outages, loss of communication, floods, train derailment. We also have specific responsibilities with all of those. So basically within this facility, if we were to have a fire right now, everyone would be getting up and we would go out and evacuate out to the muster point that's out on the other side of the street. We do a head count, and then we would confirm that everyone that's supposed to be here is here, and we were all out. So that's basically what we do for emergency preparedness. There is maps as well as a small ERP at all entrances within all of our facilities so that everybody knows where they are or where they're supposed to go for muster points and whatnot. And we do the emergency evacuation drills twice a year. We do one actual drill where we actually evacuate each one of the facilities. And then the second one can be at tabletop, where we do a discussion at one of the safety meetings. Within the ERP, all emergency phone numbers are posted there as well. Yeah. There you go. Health and Safety Committee. So we have a Health and Safety Committee that's made up of 2 employer representatives, as well as 1 employee from each one of our departments, 1 from corporate services, 1 from community services, operations, as well as protective services. We meet once a month. We have a memorandum that we have to meet at least 8 times a year, because sometimes during the summertime it's hard to have quorum. We have to have 50% of the people here to have quorum to do any voting. So if we don't have that, then we don't have a meeting because it's not vital that we have one. There we discuss all incident investigations. We do SOPs or review safe work procedures that are related to all the departments. Otherwise, the individual departments are responsible for developing their own SOPs for their own job tasks. We also come up with safety topics and recommendations for senior leaders regarding health and safety program within the town. Those minutes are kept and documented, and they're posted at each department for 3 months. They also take training. We have, they do incident investigation, hazard assessment, inspections, as well as roles and responsibilities on a joint worksite health and safety committee. So that's what the training they receive. Fit for duty policy. So our fit for duty policy is, was originally for drug and alcohol policy. It's changed for fit for duty because actually fit for duty means more than just free from drugs and alcohol. It also means free of fatigue. Fatigue can be just as bad as being under the influence of alcohol or drugs. So the policy identifies the tolerances or non-tolerances for that. If you are under the influence of alcohol or drugs, do not call in or do not show up for work, call in sick. If you're fatigued, let your manager or supervisor know that you're fatigued so that they can give you a different assignment rather than assigning you to operating a vehicle. Maybe they can assign you to something else. We also, with that, making sure that our employees are falling within the hours of work and making sure that they're not over-houred or working beyond the hours that they should be working. So working alone policy, basically we have a working alone app where any one of our employees that are to be working alone, basically if they're traveling or after hours, it comes into play with our operations and our public works and utilities employees who get called out after hours when they are the only employee. Before, what they used to do was they used to call the other worker that was on call. So now you got 2 employees that are awake. And are you awake or did you fall back to sleep? And now you're still working alone because that guy's back asleep because it's 3 in the morning. So there's no way of tracking that. So now we have a working alone app that all our employees use when they are working by themselves. So basically they get on the app, they type in where they're going, set a timer. It can be changed from, it's set at 2 hours, but it can be changed to a lesser time. So if it's a more hazardous task, there's a button you can push for more hazardous task. It then gives you a 15-minute timer rather than the 2 hours, depending on the task that you're doing. And all employees that need to utilize the working alone are trained on how to use the app so that they can be using it functionally. And that's it.
That's a lot. Thank you so much, Kevin. Like, it's extremely thorough and very impressive. So thanks for all your work. And
Cool. I would add Mayor Barclay to council, Kevin coming on 3 or 4 years ago. 4 years,
5.
5 years ago. Really a skeleton.
Who's counting?
Kevin's been instrumental in building our health and safety program along with the cooperation of the SLT and all staff actually. It's come a long way and yeah, it's measured through the core or the audit, but you can see the policy framework is pretty robust, but a really dedicated organization. Still work to do, but Kevin has been instrumental in building the program.
yeah, no, it's excellent. Thank you so much, Kevin.
Okay, so I do have, though, a few questions
Oh, geez.
of you.
Sorry, we have to move on to
there
the
is a
next
test.
section.
There is a test. So just to give you an idea of a few of the questions, that may be asked if somebody was to be selected for interview. So what are some of the key points to the health and safety policy? How about the 3 rights under OH&S? Just remember,
Remember those? I remember those, because I wrote them down.
there you go.
Yeah, well, no, but I mean, so the right to be informed, the right to participate, and the right to decline an unsafe
There you go.
environment.
That's all you need to say. There you go. So that's, yeah, that's one of the audit questions, so. What are some of the highest hazard tasks associated with the organization's operations?
Fire, equipment,
Yep. Fire department equipment operators,
council.
council, well, could be. Traveling, driving is one of the biggest hazards that we all have. Actually, it is the biggest hazard we have. If you do a hazard assessment, driving is one of the biggest hazards. Because you can only do what you do. You can't predict what anyone else is going to do. So that's why it's one of the most high hazardous tasks that we do. Pardon? Yeah. And what is the process for reporting an incident? There you go. Not sure, we haven't identified that yet, right? One of the ones that may be difficult is how does the organization communicate the results of the health and safety system evaluation to employees?
Through their safety meetings?
Through the safety meetings?
and
I think if you all go back through your emails back to probably December of last year, under all, if you get that email, I sent out the results of the audit. You don't get the all? Well, I thought everybody was included in that one. Okay, well then I'll have to change that. I have to make sure council's included in it. So yeah, so those are some of the questions. They're what we've gone through is what'll be the questions, and your answers can be just as simple as what you said. Jen? All right, any other questions, concerns? No. Thank you.
Thank you.
I do have one, Mayor Barclay, if
sorry.
I
Okay,
can
of
can
course.
ask, and it's around the use of cell phones and photos that we take on our cell phones for employees. Do we have a policy that while at work, that if you see, and it's around accident investigations, and I'll give you an example. I had a fatality in my previous life, and everybody carries a cell phone now, and there was pictures taken of that fatality that hit the internet instantly. And it made it very difficult for OH&S and the internal investigations that we needed to conduct. Do we have something that cites from 8:15 till 4:30, you take a photo, other than work-related, like I know you take pictures of parts and all of that other stuff, but when it comes to accidents and that kind of thing, or incidents, Kevin, do we have anything that,
We actually have a phone policy that you're not supposed to have your phone in working hours, only on coffee breaks and lunch breaks.
okay, and that's all I needed to know, that's all.
That's
and
that's
fine,
part of the
yeah.
policy, because we have had employees who are sitting texting, and so yeah, you're not supposed to have your phone with you when you're,
yeah.
other than lunch breaks and coffee breaks, your phone should not be out and be with you.
Okay, yeah.
So,
And we do have town phones, and we do use phones for investigations and
Yeah.
for the record. But it's only used for town use, not for engagement in public.
but I do know what you're saying about, there's pictures out there of accidents before anything ever happens. But sometimes they could be good pictures. Because sometimes those help investigators too, because, for instance, a house fire, it's really great when people start taking pictures of house fires and videos of house fires prior to the fire department getting there. Because if we can get our hands on those pictures and them videos, it sure tells a lot about what fire behavior was and where it may have started and what was going on. So sometimes they can be a benefit, sometimes they can be a hazard. Especially a fatality, that's one that just like I see no sense in having that on any social media.
Thank you very much, Jackie.
Right.
All right, thank you. I'll just have somebody please make a motion that we accept the presentation as information. Councillor Heistad.
I'll pass that motion as,
Stephen, can you go? Please.
Don't work alone.
Media.
okay. Do you want me to read this?
That's not the one.
No, that's what I thought.
No,
so
just that we're just making a motion that we
make
accept his
motion
presentation
as-
as
Yeah,
information.
as information.
Yep.
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay, all in favor? All right, carried. Okay, and we will move on to 3.3, the draft budget policy with Director Vickers, please.
Okay, thank you, Mayor Barclay. We all get an hour to talk the whole night, right? So line by line. No. Perfect. So I am bringing forward a draft budget policy for council's review and hopefully provide some feedback with the intention that we'll be bringing this back in a future council meeting for approval very shortly. So the Municipal Government Act requires each municipality to prepare operating and capital budgets each calendar year. The budget must include estimated revenues to fund the estimated expenditures to operate and maintain the municipality. The budget process allows council to make decisions regarding the level of services that can be provided to residents to maintain a safe, healthy, and vibrant community. It guides council in making decisions to fund core services, public health and safety, replace or repair infrastructure, so that's roads, sidewalks, utility lines, buildings, parks, and determine what programs are funded and to what level, youth and senior programs, library, museum, etc. The town is committed to ensuring a high level of transparency and accountability to the citizens of Innisfail. Citizen engagement into the budget process will now be encouraged and transparency will be maintained. Once this policy is passed, administration will review this policy as well as the public participation policy to bring recommendations to council regarding citizen engagement within the budget process for the 2025 budget cycle. We are just unfortunately too late in the budget year for the 24 budget cycle, but likely we'll bring something in March or April to start discussing what that looks like and what council's views are. So in addition to citizen engagement, this draft policy will guide administration in the following areas when preparing the annual budget. So short and long-term planning. So the town shall incorporate a multi-year approach to the annual budget process through the development and use of 3-year operating forecast plans and 10-year capital plans. The approach reinforces the commitment to sustain a financially viable municipality and communicates the town's short and long-term plans. So we actually already do this already. We actually pass a 1-year budget and we pass a 4-year outlook. So we don't pass a full 5-year budget. We still only pass the 1-year budget. So we're already fulfilling this need, as well as we do have a 10-year capital plan as well. So the balanced budget, so the MGA does require the town of Innisfail to adopt an operating budget where estimated revenues must cover the estimated expenditures. So this also means that going forward, we will not have a contingency within the budget. It will be zero, and going forward, we will use the operating reserve to fund some of those things that come up here and there. A base budget, so the operating budget shall be developed based on the principles of sustaining established and approved operating programs and service levels. So that means as such, the previous year's approved operating budget will be used as the starting point for the development of the current year's operating budget. Operating budget shall provide adequate capital funding to support the life cycle, maintenance, and replacement of the town's tangible capital assets over long term in accordance with the town's reserve policy. The capital budget and capital plan serve as financial planning and guiding documents for the town's investment in tangible capital assets, or we refer to them sometimes as just the TCA. The capital plan serves as a long-term financial plan that forecasts the town's anticipated TCA additions and sequencing over a 9-year period that extends beyond the capital budget. Capital funding sources, so several financing sources are available to fund capital projects, included but not limited to federal and provincial grants, capital reserves, long-term debt, and annual capital funding. Each capital project identified within the capital budget and capital plan shall include a planned capital financing source. That just means we don't want to approve any project that really doesn't have a funding expectation attached to it. These can change over time if we have an expected project in 3 years and we're assuming to use LGFF. Even though we've passed that now, we can change that in a future budget cycle. So expenses, operating expense projections shall be estimated using an objective analytical approach based on actual historic trends, predictive analysis, and professional judgment. Revenue, so operating revenue shall be estimated conservatively using an objective analytical approach based on actual historic trends, predictive statistical analysis, and professional judgment. Those are the same for both revenues and expenses. And under revenue, the town shall continuously pursue federal, provincial, and private operating grants, but will strictly limit financial support of those programs to avoid commitments which continue beyond funding availability. Tax revenue, taxes will be levied to fund the cost to deliver tax-supported town services. Then we even get into user fees, licenses, permits, and fines. So as established by council, user fees, licenses, permits, and fines will be used to offset the cost of a program or service. The cost of licenses and permits will be established to oversee the related service, and fines will be used to encourage compliance with town bylaws. Another item here is utility operations shall be funded on a basis that users pay the full cost of the utility service at rates established at budget time. So what that means is that taxes do not pay for the utility departments. They are fully self-funded. New permanent staff positions. So as a part of the annual process, administration shall present requests for new permanent staff positions as operating budget requests to council. Only under unique circumstances will council consider these types of plan requests over the course of the budget year. Budget adjustments, so at times amendments to the operating budget are necessary to facilitate town operations. So it is worded in this bylaw or policy, that the CAO can authorize budget adjustments as long as there's no net effect to the budget. So that is, we're over budget in this account, or we want to go over budget in this account and we know we're going to be under, but it's 10,000 and 10,000. This says the CAO can make that determination as long as it doesn't impact salaries, wages, or benefits. And any time that there is an additional need, either for revenue, for sources, something new, then that has to come back to council for official approval. And then it ends up with variance analysis and reporting. So quarterly budget updates and variance analysis will be prepared and presented to council, and major capital project updates will also be presented at least quarterly. Now, I will say most of these items in this policy we are currently doing now, with the exception of citizen engagement. So that will be a new addition that we do anticipate for next year. And likely there could be a small cost to that, and we'll talk about that at the budget cycle, but there will be a cost, whether it's a table and some documents to create to help that out there with the community. But I'd like to take any questions, which I'm sure there might be a
Good.
few.
Okay, go ahead.
So just fresh off of that citizen engagement, and I don't need it all spelled out, but just what type of engagement do you perceive to start with?
Absolutely. Mayor Barclay through to Councillor Bates. So it depends on the level of engagement we want, and that'll be based on the public participation policy. I anticipate we could do a survey or two. We might want to have a booth at the trade fair this year to talk about the budget, maybe at some of the market on Main, the markets, thank you. Things like that, just to get some more feedback. It depends. We'll have to talk about council how much level they want in. Are we just taking their feedback as face value? And stuff like that.
And then the other thought with that same subject would be, at what point, like, do you see gathering it to start, and then, or do you see involving citizens at any point after a certain point in the budget process that,
And again, that would be up to council after we provide you with
just
those
that we're
options.
gonna do it for now.
But
Okay.
likely, once we get to a certain point, the public would no longer be involved. We would take
Right.
their feedback in the beginning, and then we would take all that information with a grain of salt, present that to council, or discuss that with council at the time, and then we'll go from there.
Okay, thank you.
Director Vickers, a couple of questions. One on the capital funding. The operating budget shall provide adequate capital funding to support the life cycle maintenance and replacement. So I don't know that we've necessarily been doing that, right? Now that we've seen the asset management plan, or almost all of it, and, you know, considerable underfunding. So are we going to implement that? Because that will have, I would guess, fairly huge implications to
Mayor Barclay,
budget
it
going
definitely
forward.
could. At this budget cycle, I will be sitting down with Director Jenkins and possibly the manager, the facilities manager, to go over that and what they present to us. You'll see exactly what they present to go in our repairs and maintenance for the facilities, in our operating budget as well as in the capital budget, and we'll let you know.
Okay, I'm just wondering if the wording should be the operating budget may provide as opposed to shall, like shall is a certainty. And do we want to leave some flexibility in this policy or not? Maybe we've left too much flexibility for 30 years, and that's why we are where we are today. But I would just caution that, you know, things change, and there may be times where that is not even possible.
I think, Mayor Barclay, to your question, I think that's a question we have to council, is where do you want to be within the capital planning and asset management plan? Like, this, we're asking for council in the near future to make decisions on where do you want to be on your asset management plan? Do you want to maintain the B pluses, C pluses, or do you want to let them go, or do you, and we'll provide you that feedback on the results, anticipated impacts of those decisions. So, Director Kennedy, am I kind of in the right kind of vocabulary here?
Yeah, it's definitely a fair comment. It is to the verbiage in regards to shall, and I guess there's amount of time as well, because it's not something that we can just decide next year we're going to have that amount of money in there. It's going to be built up over time, and in the plan, this plan, I think, works with that strategy of building to that mark to meet our asset management, because it isn't achievable, in 1-2 years. It's something that has to be built towards. So it's a very, very good comment.
Okay, I just want to make sure that that's addressed within the policy. And then the other thing, I guess it was over in the tax revenue and the user fee area. So you mentioned the utility service, that utility fees
Yes.
need to cover, and I don't believe they are, particularly with wastewater. I mean, that's always difficult to assess, of course, depending on rainfall and stuff. I think we're doing quite well this year, but I don't know. I mean, if I recall, I believe that we are taking money out of reserves to support, like then, and are we also including, I guess that goes back to asset management, but are we also including infrastructure replacement in that as well? And
Yeah, so Mayor Barclay, so as it stands right now, we are compliant with that, just because the utility department in its whole pays for itself.
Okay.
Now, whether we want the utility rates versus the flat charges to pay for it and what goes into reserves, that's a different kind of discussion that we
Okay.
can have. But it's still not a tax-funded program, right? It is funded specifically directly from the users of the utilities. We will talk about the reserves and how much the department can put into reserves or not. That'll be at the budget discussions. We'll bring in what we recommend, and we'll discuss
okay,
that.
yeah, it just seems to me that one of the reserves, which I don't recall the name of off the top of my head, that we keep.
Yes,
Thank you.
stabilization
That's
reserve.
it. Yeah.
Yes, it will be gone this year.
Yeah,
likely.
yeah, so that's a concern, and, you know, and I guess, like I said, I guess that all fits in with the asset management
correct, yeah.
plan, and anyway, okay, thank you. Councillor Wing?
Thank you, Mayor Barclay, and through to Director Vickers. My question is regarding the section on new permanent staff positions. Because this was something that concerned me last year a little bit, and so I'm happy to see that we talk about having a multi-year approach to our budget, and that when we make decisions on this budget this year, we'll be able to look at the range of how it impacts over time. Because last year, or in this year's budget, we actually did a bit of balancing by saying, well, this position actually won't start till halfway through the year, right? So you're delaying what the problem looks like relative to the operating budget until the following year. So I guess it's just a comment to say I'm glad that we'll have that those multi-year projections in front of us when we have those conversations.
That's right, specifically, Mayor Barclay through to Councillor Wing, specifically with salaries, we'll be able to see that this year it may be X, next year it's X plus X, right? And year after that, it could be X plus X plus X.
Okay, any other questions? No. Councillor Bates?
Yeah, sitting here thinking, and I'm not opposed to it, the citizen engagement part. I think there's some pitfalls there that we have to watch, because we have to not raise false expectations. I wonder too if, like, would we be asking the questions? Because I could see a group of citizens getting together and saying, hey, let's drive this baby for the budget going forward, and that's not out of the realm of, and they might not be looking at the big picture. So those are just some things I just bring up as we
Yes.
do go there in the future, that we be aware of those things, because I can see it being some unintended consequences.
Absolutely, Mayor Barclay through to Councillor Bates. And when we at SLT decide, or we won't decide, we'll discuss the options and we'll bring that forward. We'll be looking at that. And even if it is a survey, it'll be very specific questions. There won't be a lot of room for them to pick something way out here to say, hey, this is what we want for the budget. We will kind of guide them in saying, we have to, we have taxes, we have to pay for roads, water, whatever we have to pay for. It'll be very specific, and we'll bring that to you guys, for you guys to review and approve before we even take that out to the community.
Yeah, I remember being at one IAP2 education session, and one thing, somebody, I can't remember, in Calgary or somebody that got an award, but the one thing that really stood out was really you need to set the expectations. Yes, you're participating, and that's the information that's helping us make decisions, but it's not
You're not
the be-all,
deciding.
end-all. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, so I'm quite sure it was the City of Calgary on a project they did. They won an award, and it was, they got the feedback, but they also were very clear that
Right.
what that feedback was.
Yes, Mayor Barclay will likely be the same way,
Yep.
that we want your feedback, but council still will make the final
Yeah,
decision.
I mean, there's
based
many
on-
communities that have public sessions, and
Yep.
you could even make a budget calculator, and, if you choose this, this is what happens, and
Sounds
Councillor
good.
Heistad?
No, I think you said it best there, is just when we discuss it with the community, we're the ones listening, and then we decide what the budget's going to be, where we're going to spend. And I think that's key, is the citizens understand that we're the leaders that they've chosen for the 4 years to do that. So, no, you said it very well. Thank you.
Okay, so there is a motion, just have to turn back to, there we go. So if I could please have somebody make the recommended motion. Councillor Messaros?
I'd like to move that council directs administration to bring back the draft budget policy to the next regular council meeting for approval.
Okay, thank you. And is there any further discussion or questions? Nope, all in favor? Okay, carried. Thank you, Director Vickers. And we will now move into the 3.4 allocation of operating budget surplus policy.
Thank you, Mayor Barclay. So again, this is a draft policy that I'm looking for council's review and feedback. So the Municipal Government Act requires the town of Innisfil to adopt an operating budget where the estimated revenues must cover the estimated expenditures. This means we can't budget for a deficit. But sometimes there's a surplus at the end of the year because of unanticipated increases in non-tax revenue from fees or greater than anticipated assessment growth, or sometimes there's even been savings in expenses. Operating budget surpluses represent a one-time funding that is not relied on to recur on an ongoing basis and shall be allocated to fund one-time generally non-recurring expenditures. So the attached draft policy will provide guidelines for the allocation of operating budget surpluses and shall be weighed between the following options. So to reserves based on priorities derived from the town's reserves policy, funding of non-recurring expenditures within the following year's operating or capital budgets, repayment of outstanding debt. So when we're bringing in our fourth quarter financials for, say, 22, we bring it in 23. So if anything has come up in 23 that we can use to spend that, a one-time, one-off, that's what it's intended for. This policy will guide administration in our recommendation to council annually with our fourth quarter financials and surplus allocation report. So this is just going to guide administration in what we bring to council for approval. Council will always get the final say on where it goes at the end of the day. So that's it. It's actually quite a small policy, only one page. We are basically doing this right now. This just kind of formalizes the process and just outlines council's expectations of administration when we bring that forward annually. So I will look for any feedback or take any
Sure.
questions.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? No, I think we're good. Just have somebody make the recommended motion, please.
I'll do that. I'll move the council directs administration to bring back the draft allocation of operating budget surplus policy to the next regular council meeting for approval.
Great, thank you. All in favor? Okay, carried. Thank you. And we will move into 3.5 with CEO Becker.
Thank you, Mayor Barclay. So this report is really preliminary to your organizational meeting, which is slated for October 23rd. Council, according to the MGA, is required to have an organizational meeting each year, and it's roughly the last council meeting of the October. So what happens is you'll have your organizational meeting either before or after your regular council meeting as you're sitting at that time. The intent of this report is just to help you get to that point of October 23rd. This is just information sharing, allows you to have interaction, conversation, and where you wish to go, how you wish to proceed with your committees. The organizational meeting will likely include other smaller components, but the committee appointments is probably the biggest part of that meeting. So yeah, part of this report, we included, we do it every year, every 2 years, we do a survey of council's internal committees. So we have two slated sides of your committees. One is internal, which is what's listed there. Then you have your external ones that you decide to sit on outside of your committees. So we did survey those participating on these committees, and all the feedback provided as part of this report. What we can do with that information administratively, we can kind of dissect that information. If there's administrative processes we can adjust to help the committees be more effective, we'll consider that. And if there's anything related to governance, administration will come back to you for your consideration and potential guidance. Certainly there for you to ask any questions. Part of this report also is the terms of reference. Each committee is developed through terms of reference for bylaw, just to help, well, it helps create clarity of what the committees, what their mandate is in the membership, et cetera. Yeah, also part of this report is your printed, is your committee preference sheets. So we asked Juanita and through to our ledge coordinator, Vanessa, to develop hard copies. What I'm asking council to consider is just to fill out your top 5 that you wish to sit on internally, and then top 5 of your external committees, submit back to Vanessa. And the intent is to review the results of that compiled information with the mayor, which will help lead into your conversation likely in 2 weeks at your next AMP meeting, which is in advance of your last, of your organizational meeting. Outside of that, council, if there's any questions, but there was one thing not included in this report, and there was a question to me just regarding some of the council's internal committees, if there's any possibility council to consider kind of a regional, not so much regional focus, but immediate area for, I'll give you an example. The Economic Development Committee committee through the terms of reference has a reference for the membership that can be a town of citizen or a business owner that lives outside of the town of boundaries. So kind of be a regional participant. We have that currently. The policing committee is mainly town residents. there's inquiry about that committee, would council be open to have more of a regional focus to appoint those probably likely in the vicinity of Innisfil that have a vested interest in Innisfil? I think age-friendly too is more situated towards the town of Innisfil folks, but, so that question is posed, I'll leave that to you for your consideration. Yeah, based on the report, council, if there's any feedback or questions, a lot of detail here on your committees on, yeah, help you make your decisions based on your circumstance and where you wish to apply. And just lastly, Mayor Barclay, I know council moves into committees based on a philosophy, and some philosophies have moved into we should change out, so learning, or no, we should maintain consistency. So it's really up to you to decide how you wish to proceed collectively.
Yeah, I think there was some verbiage in there that if you were put NA beside a committee you're already sitting on, and I would say, you know, just let us know what you want to do. And everybody may not get everything they want, but we'll certainly try to accommodate that without question. The one thing I'm not sure if everybody knows what time committee meetings are. I don't believe
I think it's in the,
well, some are in there, right? But not all. So like age-friendly, I believe, is at 1 p.m.
Yep.
ACDEV is at 5. Community Services Standing Committee is that at 5? 5. And FCSS, 5. Joint use, I don't know. Have we had a joint use? Councillor Harrison? Okay. Okay. The Library Board, 7 p.m.?
6 or 7, but evening, yes.
Okay. And Intermunicipal Development Plan, we have had no meeting. It's probably daytime, though. MDP is at 3 or 4? Oh, right, the MDP plan. And that committee, I think we're going to leave that intact because it's really an ad hoc committee. And we don't want to interrupt the work that's going on, and they'll be finished next year sometime. Emergency preparedness, that's at 5. Is that at 5? Yes. MPC 3, policing 5, right? 5 o'clock. Subdivision development appeal, don't know, 3? Daytime, okay. Transportation Standing Committee has been daytime in the past. CAPE, it's kind of a half-day thing. Regional Waste Management Commission, Councillor Bates, that's you. Once a year. What time is that?
That thing has been twice a year,
Oh, okay.
and it's usually been at, I want to say, around 1 o'clock. It
Okay.
seems like the Red Deer County, they administer it and they call
Okay.
those meetings.
And Historical Village,
And
of course.
it's usually at the Red Deer County
Okay.
office.
Okay. We've got Historical Village, Chamber of Commerce is noon. Is that correct, Councillor Wing? Okay. And the Regional Water Service Commission, yeah, Councillor Bates? No, it's at 10,
I
yeah.
got it.
Yeah, and the wastewater is at 9, about for half a day. What else is on the next page there? I don't know. PCPS, Councillor Messaros, I think that was that you that was attending that? Yeah. What time was it? It was in the mornings, I think. Okay, daytime it says, okay. And of course, Parkland is at 10 a.m., Regional Library 1. Municipal Users Group, what time is that, Councillor Harrison? The Red Deer River Municipal Users Group. What time is the Red Deer River Municipal Users Group?
It's 1 p.m. every
Okay, kind of a half day?
Yes,
Okay, okay,
unless you're a director, then they have their directors.
okay, yep. Okay, and the other thing, I don't know if we want to discuss this now or another time, but are there any committees that we want to, sorry, Councillor Heistad, got your light on over there.
Oh, it's okay. No, I'll let you finish and then I'll jump in.
Just wondering if there's any committees that we want to remove from, I guess, external committees. Do you want to continue on? And I guess the one I would throw out is Historical Village, because we don't have a vote on that. You know, is it going to be a missing link, or, and I will reach out and ask for Councillor Heistad, and I think Messaros and Bates have all attended meetings in this past year, so.
I'll speak to that. You know, right now, I think the last 4 or 5 months, I think it's probably important that we're there at times. I know that the structure of the governance of it does not make sense in the way I see it, but I do think we do have an investment with that property, and being involved would really help them. So I've had some reflection on that, because I have brought that forward and questioning, why I'm there. But I think there's a significant investment with them. So it's important to be there, whoever's going to sit on that committee. And my other comment on committee work is sometimes, and I had mentioned it to CEO Becker, there's an opportunity for us to help those board members to become how to move within a board, or actually how process works. I find that some of the boards that we do sit on can be very lengthy at times because we haven't given them the training or the skills to maneuver through the governance process at the committee level. But that's my reflection on the village, and I think they need a lot of help this year. There's a lot of need, or there's an opportunity for them to. There's a lot of capital that they need to make sure that it's successful in the next few years. So I'm not saying that we're going to give them the capital, okay?
Just going to say that was my concern.
No. I'm just saying that I think structurally we can give them the guidance or assistance to help them along.
Help them find funding, or?
Yeah, not that we're doing all the work, but I think they do need some assistance. And it's an aging board as well. We need some new life.
CEO Becker?
Just a question to council. Administration came to council about a month ago regarding the Transportation Standing Committee. Just looking for council feedback on what you're seeing with that committee. The administrative recommendation was to either put it with the Community Services Standing Committee or remove it. Looking for your feedback, council, what you see with that committee.
Well, I feel it's a really important topic, and I think we need to do more in the transportation area, and I think I'm thinking more regionally. I think, in our community, things are going quite well. Yeah, we've had some bumps with the ban and stuff, but I think back 4 or 5 years ago when we had the committee and we had the regional pilot that the provincial government had put in place with the city of Red Deer and stuff, and I just think transportation is such a big issue, and as a rural community, we need to be at the forefront of this topic, and we need to be advocating for funding. I know Alberta Munis has a resolution on their books to advocate for that, but I think through FCM as well that we need help with rural transportation because it's going to help our community thrive as opposed, and it's a very costly service as we know. So I think it's really important that we, and whether it's, I know I kind of said, oh, well, let's leave it separate, but I also saw comments back from the Community Services Standing Committee that they kind of feel that they could be doing a lot more. So maybe that is a good place for it to be, and so, as opposed to having another committee. Yeah. Councillor Heistad?
Councillor Bates had it on first.
Yeah, my thoughts, I'd seen those comments too, and then I guess what I think about the transportation is if something starts to emerge that needs more emphasis, then you could create the ad hoc at that point. But really, right now, it's saying scheduled as required. I mean, yeah, I'm not sure what our next topics are there, and so I guess I'm kind of waffling towards the
Just one comment.
community standing committee.
And just to add,
Being able to do that, that's,
yeah, as part of the MDP committee, where my thought goes, and you haven't seen the results of your strategic planning session, so I'd say, because we're limited on resources, and new committees require administrative support, so we're tapped there. But if certainly line up your committees to your strat plan too. So if council feeling transportation is a requirement, we need to advance beyond the service adjustments we made, then certainly focusing on the committee. Just be cautious on, or just, I guess, awareness, not caution, aware of on the resources and where they're going, and focusing your committee structure around those immediate priority areas.
I guess my only comments around
Transportation Standing Committee as well, is that, you know, hopefully within the next 6 months, we'll kind of be deciding if we're sticking with the current setup we have. And then beyond that, it's largely operational until there's, you know, is there a new vehicle? Is there a drastic change in service level? That type of thing. So for a committee of that sort, you know, that line between governance and operational. Community Services Standing Committee, age-friendly is also probably a committee that could at least provide, if council needs input on, you know, if we're gonna change, say we're gonna change hours or something like that, maybe that's something that we ask the age-friendly committee to provide us feedback on or utilize them more specifically. I did see the committee or the comments around the Community Services Committee as well. And I think that committee has evolved over time. We do have a couple members that have been on, going back to when there also used to be an Operational Services Committee, when they were very much involved in the day-to-day operations of what the different departments were doing.
I think that was one of the first things that was cut when CEO Becker came along.
Yes. So there definitely has been a change in how that committee is utilized.
Okay, so Councillor Heistad?
No, I agree with everybody's comments. I think it's well thought out and we'll get there. So, just love you all today. Wish Johnny was here to hear that.
Councillor Bates?
The other thing that comes to mind is not really to do with us picking where we're going. When I look at all of our town ones, we still struggle to get that youth component. And like we've had them a couple of times in, I know the police one, and then came and went, and I don't know how you do that. And yet I just know that that's going to be valuable if we can ever make those connections better.
CEO Becker?
I think just grabbing onto the youth and don't formalize it so much and just come onto our policing committee. I see you, you're at our events, at the barbecues at Centennial Park. We want you to come to a future meeting. We'll give you a quick orientation, but we just want your presence. And I think just simplify it. And if they come to 2 meetings, great. And then just maybe not formalize it through council resolution, but
Yeah,
just grab the youth and have them participate.
I agree with that, or even do a meeting at the school or something. right?
Well,
Or
and
go-
that's
Go to
part
where
of
they
that.
are.
That public participation to
Yeah.
meet them where they are. And last week we were, as part of the community safety and well-being plan, we were in a grade 10 classroom. You know, some of those things that, yeah, maybe we can't get one to commit to be a committee member, but trying to do those things where we are getting out and talking to them.
Yeah, I had a friend of mine who has late-stage teenagers or kind of up there, and it was, I don't want to be on a committee, Mom, that sounds so boring. So, you know,
Bring food and
yeah,
they'll
pizza,
talk.
bring pizza. Yeah.
Well, I think sometimes it's pressure too, because I know
Lots going on.
on the policing committee, when we had a youth, we would turn to them and ask questions, and it was almost like, you know, well, I don't know if I know all of that for all the people,
Right.
but here's my opinion. And maybe you, I don't know, maybe you get a couple, so they feel like they've got a partner. Yeah, we're missing that element.
Councillor Wing?
I'd just like to go back for a second to the transportation topic. I wonder if we could include transportation in the terms of reference for age-friendly, community economic development, community services, and the intermunicipal development plan. In my opinion, the transportation conversation isn't purely around let's buy a van. I agree with the mayor. This is much more around how do we move people, how do we grow the community by having opportunities for folks. So I'm fine in not, either we completely transform the Transportation Standing Committee terms of reference, or we just insert it in a few other places where I think it's important. That's just my 2 bits worth.
So would you do that, or would it just come up as a topic of discussion in those committees? Like
Yeah.
it may be a priority within,
To Councillor Ring's point, I believe it may be in conflict if there's not defined to one place that kind of leads it, but also include the other components of council's committees for feedback. I think it's important to have cross-reference of input, but one single identity to that committee mandate.
So what do you suggest? Like,
Basically, keep transportation on the one committee, but then make sure there's broad reaching inclusion to other pieces that have a play on transportation.
okay, so don't move it inside the Community Services Standing Committee? Leave it separate?
No, I'd say put it as per the director is either community services or age
Or
friendly.
age-friendly,
Okay.
because
Yeah.
transportation is a pillar of
It
the
is, yeah.
age-friendly
Yeah.
framework. It's something that they have already had some conversation around. I know they are a little bit, sort of focused more on that senior, so ensuring it's an across-the-board transportation consideration. But I think they are also a board that could use some decisions to make.
Yeah.
Now that they have their action plan, and they're not necessarily a huge decision-making board as much as, trying to influence those various pillars of an age-friendly community.
I do have a question, Mayor Barclay, just one to the director, as for Councillor Wing's comments. So transportation, is that part of the MDP review? So how important that conversation is? regarding
Somewhat in a
transportation?
different, transportation from the MDP lens is more to do with transportation infrastructure and, sort of roadways and pedestrian connections and sort of how that works within the community as opposed to the service delivery part of a public transportation system.
Okay. And then I'd like your feedback, CEO Becker, on external committees and we've talked before, feedback from other communities that kind of exited many of them, and fear is that you're sitting there and now there's a lot of onus on the municipality to provide funding, to provide advice, guidance, and you kind of get brought into it. And we don't have a lot of capacity, so I agree with what Councillor Heistad is saying, that I think it's important to be there with our external stakeholders, but how do we kind of keep it separate? Like, we're really there as a liaison. And like, do you have concerns with?
Always concerns with the resources, but I recently met with Historical Village, and I would agree with Councillor Heistad that I think right now, based on the conversation I had there, leave it outside of the open dialogue, that likely is a good place to be. Certainly to evaluate in due time. I think we have a role to play to help advise on where to get resources to help your governance, not to provide the governance, but how to, that was a question posed, how do we as a governance board get governance training, because we're getting a certain demographic, we're changing out. And so that, I think that's our role, is to seek them resources or find the resources and connect them as facilitators. But certainly up to council. Yeah, it's right now on that one, I'd say it's important to be there.
Yeah, no, I think it's always good to be with external stakeholders in the community and keep that dialogue open. And okay, so does anybody have any further questions about this? All good? Okay. Can't find the motion. Juanita, there it is. So if somebody could make the motion that council initiate the review of council internal and external committees. Is that what you want the motion to be?
Probably just receive it as information,
okay.
Mayor Barclay.
Okay, yeah, thanks.
Just exactly what CEO Becker said.
Okay, thank you. All in favor? Okay, thanks. Maybe we could have those back maybe by the end of this week. And to Juanita, you said to Vanessa, to Juanita? Or?
Oh, Juanita, it probably is
Yeah,
easy.
probably
and then
easier, yeah.
She can
Okay,
answer
thank
to
you.
with Vanessa.
Okay. And we will move into correspondence and information. I'll just have somebody make a motion, please. Councillor Harrison?
Thank you, Mayor Barclay. Just a correction to the age-friendly minutes. September 23rd, I didn't attend that meeting. I was not, so just a bit of an oversight. Maybe it was Councillor Heistad.
Councillor Heistad was there, yes. I was sitting in the back row in council chambers.
Thank you.
Yeah, you were online, yeah. Okay, thank you. Please have someone make a motion that we accept the correspondence as information.
Mayor Barclay, I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Councillor Dunham. All in favor? Carried. So today, we're starting with Councillor Bates.
This will be kind of easy, I think. So last week, basically, Alberta municipalities is what I did. It does occur to me that, and I'm not prepared to do it today, but that we should perhaps take a few minutes at some point and go through some of the things that we might have learned in our breakouts. Well, I didn't bring mine, but anyway, no, I'm not sure if everybody's prepared to do that, but I went to 3 that were all very good. The 4th, we just got started, and then we had to break off to our other meeting. And I just think it would be useful to hear what other people learn.
Definitely.
Like I say, I'm not prepared today to
Okay,
give you mine.
thank you. Councillor Messaros?
Thank you, Mayor Barclay. Yeah, Alberta Munis was a highlight last week. I went to a couple of sessions that I'd like to talk about. One of them was, thanks, Jason, with Dan Jones, and it was about getting to the root of the cause of homelessness and incarceration and that kind of thing. And I think what it pointed out to me is how well we're doing as a municipality in terms of what our philosophy is and the work that we're doing by dividing or removing silos and trying to do the work together. So one of the stats that came up was that something like 97% of incarcerated individuals have suffered some kind of trauma, usually some kind of sexual abuse trauma. And what the problems are with the system and what we need to do to ensure that when they're ready to come out, just based on timelines, that those supports are there. And I think that that's what we talk about in council all the time, and that's what we do in our admin. So I was so happy. It felt good listening to it. He talked about leading with compassion. And I know from serving on the policing committee that I think we do a pretty good job that way as well. So it was a really great session. The other session that I went to was about bringing film crews in to your municipality, and I'm super interested in doing that. And they talked about what they're doing with the Mountain View Film Office and the structures that they're putting in place that maybe other municipalities would be able to latch on to, so that we're not reinventing the wheel again if that's something that we decide that we wanted to do. They talked about the legacy of bringing the film in terms of the economy, in terms of awareness of the location, in terms of people actually locating here, and it was super interesting. They also talked about some of the pitfalls, and of course, so that was interesting too. It was a really great presentation. On Sunday, I went to the March Against Domestic Violence and Intimate Partner Abuse, and it was it's always heavy, but it was good to be there. And our meeting tomorrow, MPC, is canceled. So, yeah, that's it. Thanks.
Do you think, Councillor Messaros, that maybe Mountain View Film Society would maybe come in at some point and do a presentation to council? Would that be worthwhile?
Yeah, I do, and I do think it would be worthwhile. And I know that what they're reviewing, they're not reviewing, they're trying to structure a membership kind of, I don't know, they're at the very beginning stages. And I think that I talked to them a little bit afterwards about if they thought about doing some, like a municipal corporate membership, sort of, so that municipalities could have access to everything that they're already purchased into or bought into or know about, and that is something that they're talking about. I would think it would be a great idea. I wasn't sure where to talk about it. If I end up on one of the committees that I've put my name down for, maybe that would be a place to talk about it. But I don't know if people are interested. But I think it's just in terms of developing like an economic development kind of thing. I think it's a great and fun idea. Yeah.
Yeah, we had a meeting probably, well, maybe over a year ago now with person that was with the Historical Village about that, and seemed to be lots of opportunity, but then not sure what happened, but maybe once kind of this crazy busy time passes, well, I guess it doesn't pass for you guys, but maybe we could invite them in to do a presentation and at some point. Okay, we'll keep that on your radar going forward. So, Councillor Heistad.
Yeah, like Cindy, Dan Jones, I actually think he'd be great for the policing committee when we're doing some of our outreach with the RCMP or just talking about the committee itself. As the compassion piece was really big, and I think we're doing a lot of that. But we are dealing with a number of people that are living in here that are struggling, and homelessness is a big one. And he talked about that, and sex trade workers, and how he was a beat cop, but he was always compassionate about how he was arresting people and how he dealt with them on a one-on-one basis. So it really hit me hard where he was talking about some of the individuals he worked with, and they're friends to this day throughout his whole career. Code of conduct, I went to that one, which was really good, so I can watch my own behaviors. But no, I think no swearing, dress code, make sure I'm dressing appropriately, wear my clothes. But she was a really good instructor. I thought it was a really good opportunity, and it blew me away how some people didn't know much about their own code of conduct or process, which is good to review. So, which I'm going to do that, Mayor Jean. And I thought the Alberta Munis, I thought it was I always think that the convention's very well run. It's interesting to see the politics with the motions and how communities vote. But I think I honestly, I really enjoyed it. And as to this week, I have Historical Village tomorrow. Also I was at the march as well, and it was really well, I thought it was well attended. It hits home on what happens in our own community and area, and it's a very somber event, but it's a lot of reflection, which was really it's good, and so the organizers did a great job. So thanks. That's it.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Dunham.
Thank you, Mayor Barclay. I also attended the Alberta Community Convention. Wednesday sessions that I attended were overcoming roadblocks to economic development and strategic growth. Then was able to sit on half of the Code Blue municipalities to the rescue of healthcare as we had to exit to have our meeting with Minister McIver. Thursday I attended the emergency disaster management, and the town of Edson and Grand Prairie were there. And just my observation, maybe I chose the wrong ones this year, but I didn't actually find the breakout sessions to be as strong as they had previously. I found for the rescue of healthcare and the emergency management, it was more just people telling their stories of their community. For me, there was no tangible data or anything to grab a hold of or to look into. It was great to see what these communities had done to try and bring doctors, nurses, their method or their process to try and keep their hospitals and clinics open. But the one about emergency disaster management literally was just a story that they told. And I guess my big takeaway from that one is just make sure that you have your management plan in place, because you never know what's going to happen, or if there's going to be a series of events like Edson have, where they had, in May, the beginning of the fire, the second fire, then the flood, and then multiple, who in a community, because as they said, they had never actually had an evacuation of their community before. So for them to have that, and it was also, I guess, the other thing that I found interesting was the interaction between the town mayor and the CAO too, and just how they function together in that. Another standout for me was within the resolutions. It was astonishing to me, and I think this being not our first, for people that had been on council previously, but just how much we're based around money. The first one that outgoing President Huron mentioned about the LGFF and how much money to increase it to the $1.72 billion as opposed to the $770 million that the province has allocated. Yeah, I think all communities are suffering in the same way, and it was just interesting to follow those, the resolutions. The other one to me that meant a lot was the nonpartisan politics on a community level. I think that's very, very important, and I was really glad to see the support it got. For me this week, I've got the Community Economic Development Committee meeting. Unfortunately, this past weekend, I was not able to attend any of the events. We had a little illness in our family, so that's it for me.
Okay, thank you. Then Councillor Wing is next.
Thank you, Mayor Barclay. Yes, I guess I'll just add my comments. I really enjoyed the Alberta Munis Conference last week. The highlights for me from the breakout perspective, I went to the Overcoming Roadblocks to Economic Development, which included some very interesting comment and insight for me on access to adequate childcare and how that impacts employers and businesses that are looking for places to locate their businesses. I did have a conversation at the end of the session with the facilitator of that session, who's on City Council in Calgary, and commented that from my perspective, they hadn't talked about regional transportation as being a roadblock, and they needed to. And he was quite interested. Like, the big cities just don't think about stuff like that. But anyway, defending the local in local elections, so that partisanship perspective. I loved the session, but I was absolutely blown away by the comments by the Premier and ministers relative to party politics in local elections. So that'll be an interesting development in the coming months and years. Deciphering the code for council behavior, I sat behind Councillor Heistad and made sure that he behaved himself and kept sending him notes saying, "Did you hear that? Did you hear that? Did you hear that?" Anyways, I too thought that the presentation was outstanding, probably one of the very best I've ever heard. So when it comes time to revisit our code of conduct, there's opportunities to have some really good conversations. Those keynote presentations by people like Kendall Netmaker on personal growth and overcoming absolutely unbelievable challenges as an Indigenous child and man was very inspiring. Aaron Paquette and Chief Randy Erminskin in their presentation around building relationships, that was amazing. Bean Gill and the presentation on access and being in a wheelchair. Yeah, I thought it was a really good conference. I'm very glad that I attended. The political presentations from the Leader of the Opposition and the Premier and the Bear Pit. Yeah, well, it's always interesting. It's always good to get that. And certainly the resolutions is always a highlight, as is the music. So thank you. That was my week.
Thank you. Councillor Harrison.
Thank you, Mayor Barclay. Again, a very quiet week. I did not attend the Alberta Municipalities Convention. I hope to get back to some type of normalcy after the weekend. It's been a sort of hectic three weeks a month here and on the personal side. So we hope to get back to being somewhat normal. And yeah, I'll just leave it at that. Thank you very much.
And our condolences, Councillor Harrison, to Colleen and all of you on passing of her father. So I as well attended the Alberta Munis Conference in Edmonton. The highlight for me was a panel with Councillor Aaron Paquette, Chief Randy Erminskin, Mayor Maureen Miller of St. Paul, and Mayor Tanya Thorne of Okotoks, discussing building municipal Indigenous relations. The discussion with Councillor Paquette AL has led me to reflect on what we are doing moving forward with Truth and Reconciliation in our community. And I really look forward to having further dialogue with Council about this in the coming weeks. I know on page 6 of our strat plan, we have stated as a key goal and initiative that we will acknowledge, honor, and celebrate the richness of our Indigenous relationships and celebrate the culture and heritage of our community, which of course should include Indigenous history. So I really reflected upon it this weekend, particularly September 30th, the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation. And I felt quite bad, to be honest with you, that the municipality, we weren't doing anything that day. And I know next year it will be on a Sunday, so maybe we can, have some discussions about what we can do to honor that day and recognize our history. I also certainly enjoyed the inspiration from keynote Bean Gill, and of course the debaters were a lot of fun as well. The breakout sessions I attended included overcoming roadblocks to economic development, the Code Blue municipalities to rescue healthcare, and deciphering the code for council behavior. I'm really grateful for all the work our administration team has accomplished, along with Factor 5 and the support of the CED advisory group in getting Innisfail to a point where we are investment ready and have accumulated data and reports to provide to potential investors. They talked to the ECDev a lot around like labor studies and that kind of thing, and I know that we've done that already, and so I think we've come a long way in kind of evolving the organization and becoming much more sophisticated. With the healthcare, and we are so fortunate to have the healthcare professionals we do in this community that have deep roots and participation in the rural family medicine programs, as well as having innovative thinkers that have developed new programs for residents and understand the importance of a holistic approach to health and wellness. I did not attend the Code of Conduct session because of any issues, but rather to just have a better understanding what others are doing and listen to success and stories and challenges. I think one area of our own Code of Conduct bylaw is the absence of any reference to social media policy. And I would like to see us review that at some point. I won't put it on our plate right now, but we can review it another time. And, you know, another idea is that maybe every year at the organizational meeting, we review that code of conduct. And I know at former employer, we went through code of conduct education. It was just kind of a review of the code of conduct policy every year, and we signed off on it. That way, everybody understands that we can talk about it as a group and make any changes that we feel need be. I know it was updated when Sherry Ann Deluge was doing some work with the town, but I really think that social media piece is missing. That was Sunday, I attended the 3rd annual Innisfail March Against Domestic Violence and Intimate Partner Abuse. Thank you so much to Erica Federley and Lisa Robinson, who continue to organize the day and to be such strong advocates for those who are experiencing abuse. We also heard from Diane and Jacob from Standing Stones, Mary Dawn from Innisfail Victim Services, and of course Kirsten Gardner's sisters. And her family was there as well, who continued to tell Kirsten's story. Kirsten was the young woman who was murdered in Bowden about 3 years ago, and the family has become very strong advocates for reform to the justice system, among other things. And representatives from the Mountain View Emergency Shelter Society were also there. They're going to be renaming that, or they will be naming that shelter once it is built, Kirsten's Place. And it sounded like they have pretty much have all the funding in place for that, or very close to it. And her father has been a very big part of that. So as Councillor Messaros said, it was a heavy day without question, always is. Tomorrow I'm at a recovery summit day in Red Deer, starting at 7:30 in the morning, going till 4, and then the community economic development meeting tomorrow evening. So upon that, we will have a motion to go in camera, please.
I'll make that motion, Mayor
Okay,
Barclay.
thank you, Councillor Dunham. All in favor? Okay, thank you.